Welcome to Nelltown Model Railway. I'm John, and in this video we'll be dealing with the countryside section, scenery and making good the ballast. First of all, I measured a fence near me and got the following dimensions, as can be seen on the screen. Based on the measurements, I determined that I could use 1mm MDF for the fence, and then went about drawing my idea of how to create it. This is the second set of drawings I produced. The first were with the posts double in length so I could fold them over, which you'll see in the laser cutting part of the video, but this didn't work, so I changed it to having a single plane of fencing and posts and then adding a post later. Once I was happy with the plan, I moved on to my laser cutting software, Lightburn, and generated the requisite file to make my fence, and moved on to the cutter and took ages cutting numerous lengths. As you can see, I can get 6 bits of fence per A4 size of MDF, and it takes a fair time. Once cut out, it was to the table for the task of sticking the parts together and allowing them to dry. And here is the bit of fence with all the posts attached, not quite straightened yet, but they were straightened before applying a weight and allowing all the fence panels to dry overnight. As you can see, there is some fencing already being put in, and this was in the most difficult to reach area, and what you now see is again a difficult area to reach. In order to fit the fencing, I just lay one of the panels on to the ground where I wish to place the fence, marked where the posts were, and then used a 3mm drill bit, which gives me a little bit of leeway to sugar the fence backwards and forwards if I've just misjudged with the drill. The MDF is very flexible, which is beneficial for this. Unfortunately, due to the location that this bit of the fencing is, it's a jaunty looking fence that has clearly had a bit of weathering and been hit by a few tractors, and the land has subsided, so it's winky wonky. As you can see, once the holes were drilled, I painted over them to clear away the white, but all of this will be made good at a later stage, especially in the more reachable areas, but I plan to put bushes, etc. along the fence line. My current fir tree conifers are buddleia flowers that are dried, some from last year and some from this year. The smaller ones at the back are from this year and are just being cut from the bush and still flexible, as can be seen, and the bigger ones are from last year and dried, so you can see differences in colour, but as normal I do use hairspray and then scatter with green scatters to give the semblance of the foliage on the trees, and I think they give a good effect at the distance. I'll probably try something newer or different when it comes to fir trees closer to the viewer. This was an initial test fit. As you can see, the trees have been covered in scatter, and this was just so I could stand back and review the foot and a half that the conifers were covering on the layout. Once happy, I removed them and then individually covered them with scatter. I must point out that the few conifers to the rear of the fence, i.e. near the ceiling of the loft, it was quite difficult to remove those, so I decided to hairspray them and add the scatter whilst they were in position, which seemed to work quite well. The ones on the forward side of the fence were easier to remove and individually cover, and my plan is to do all of them individually and hand scatter or hand cover them, but obviously I'm going to have to source more buddleia flowers, as I've got another 10 feet I think it is to complete. As I move down the slope towards the countryside station, obviously the altitude and trees change, so I'll be looking at getting some more sea foam, and like the big tree in the canal scene, making deciduous trees accordingly to intersperse with conifers and gradually move into a totally deciduous tree area with some open spaces of farmland. Again, I think the effect using natural materials is very good, and obviously apart from the scatter and the hairspray, is exceptionally cheap, and the trees that I've just made probably came in at, well, for the scatter, £14 for a big tub, but I used a minimal amount, and the hairspray I think is £1 for a tin of it. So really, you are getting trees for pennies as opposed to buying off the shelf for pounds in some cases. As you saw in the chinchilla sand video, I scraped away as much as I could without having to lift the track, and I have now added a fine scale mixed grey ballast to the tracks. And in this part of the video you'll see that I am adding standard PVA without being diluted between the tracks, and I'm sprinkling in various ground covers, the first being a layer of garden soil that's been dried and sieved, and then sieved again, added my fingers, and then overlaid of that is a green scatter, dried summer earth I think it is, and then after that I've used some slightly larger scale scatter for some undergrowth. And again, I'll be looking at using static grass in this area and also little bushes that I make myself. But before I do that, I'll weather the track so that part of the green scenery aspect, or the natural scenery, can be blended in with the tracks with the standard dirt that comes off the modern railway. As you can guess, with 10 foot of this part of the layout to be scened, it's going to take some time, and I will add more fencing. I've got to make good a little bit of land form, but as I've said previously, I think in a part of the railway near me, Inch, there is a small workers area where the ballast trains load up, so I'm thinking of adding that into the layout. So I've got to plan that and construct things accordingly.